I think journeys are a way to help translate different ways of seeing and being in the world into a single artifact we can all point to. And the moment that artifact becomes a shared source of truth, it becomes the most powerful alignment tool for teams. It's like it sits on the wall and you go, and I'm working on this, and this is how it relates to you, and I'm stuck here, and this is a problem because it starts affecting this piece. It's a way to create one team rather than individual functions who are just working towards their own KPIs. If I don't understand A, what the outcome needs to be, or B, how the different parts of the business together achieve that outcome, I'm going to scale individual capabilities, but I'm not going to scale the journey. And if I don't scale the journey, I don't scale towards the outcome. That's the mismatch. Customer experience ultimately has two functions: to create visibility and decision clarity. And the second piece is this weaving together the different functions that all have got their own goals to work towards. If we know we are an organization that has limited resources and really wants to lean into the possibilities that AI creates, are we going to play with that during conversion? Is that the smart move? Or are we building capability elsewhere in the journey with AI first until we've figured out how this fits, learn from it, and then push into the moments that matter?
Welcome to the Tech Waka podcast, where we dive into the journeys of New Zealand's top tech leaders. Your host for today is Jakub, bringing you conversations with tech leaders and innovators from across Aotearoa. Join us as we uncover the experiences, challenges, and successes that shape our tech community. This episode of the Tech Waka podcast is proudly brought to you by Wires Uncrossed, lifting the standard of software delivery across New Zealand, Australia, and beyond. A big thanks to Wires Uncrossed for supporting the Tech Waka mission and backing the voices of our tech leadership community. To learn more, go to wiresuncrossed.co.nz.
Hello, Jakub here. Here's something I hear from technology leaders all the time. Marketing wants more leads, sales wants better leads, product wonders why nobody's using the features they built, and customer service is drowning in calls. Everyone is hitting their KPIs and the business still isn't growing the way it should. My guest today, Sarah Clearwater, says there's a reason for that. We're scaling individual functions, not scaling the whole journey. Sarah is the founder of Reframer and the customer experience strategist who spoke at last year's Beacon conference. In this conversation, we get into why siloed KPIs create invisible dysfunction, how engineers can move from being a receiving function to having real upstream influence, and what AI agents mean for the future of experience design. We also landed on an idea I think every CTO should steal: translating tech debt into experience debt. Enjoy the conversation. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you, Jakub?
Very good. I'm so glad to have you here because you were one of the people whom I quoted last year in my summary episode at the end of the year, because I think your talk at Beacon conference last year really sit very well with me. And yeah, I'm glad you're here because hopefully we can explore your experience in customer journey mapping and customer experience overall with you and see how they can help us build better businesses and be better leaders.
That sounds exciting. I look forward to the conversation.
On your LinkedIn, I noticed that your tagline is customer experience for sustainable growth. Maybe that's a good place to start. What does it mean?
We, at Reframer, we've been going for the last 9 years to help organizations put customers at the heart of their operations and their growth ambitions. And one thing that we keep noticing is that when we're not clear on who we're serving and why we're serving them and what good looks like through their eyes, we start to lack clarity on the direction of our businesses, and we are unable to really clearly articulate where growth should go or who was involved in actually making that growth happen. So when we talk about, customer experience for sustainable growth, what we're saying is we want good businesses. We want businesses that go for a long time. Businesses are a vital part of our socioeconomic ecosystem. But the dominant narrative around business is scale and pace. And while that is part of especially technology-enabled businesses, it's not how we're going to build a robust and resilient business ecosystem over time. A strong ecosystem requires intent, it requires durability, it requires an ability to work with the unknown, with constant disruption. And customer experience, in my view, has the opportunity to bring clarity and anchor businesses through a sea of continuous change. That's where that's really coming from.
Is this customer experience for any business? Doesn't matter what size and domain it is in?
So my understanding is that when we're a smaller business or a startup, let's say under 50 or even under 100 staff, we tend to be close enough to the problem to solve a lot of things quite intuitively in the right way. In many ways, often people start businesses because they're experiencing a pain and they want to solve for that pain. So especially leaders in smaller organizations up to, around 50 to 80 staff tend to be close enough for the problem, which means that they'll make intuitive decisions around what to solve for next and how to solve it. The moment we scale beyond that, the business necessitates a bit sort of separation between decision makers and frontline, right? As a CEO, as a senior leader, it's very hard to keep sitting in the day-to-day. And importantly, if you've been going for a long time, your customers' problems, as well as your customers, are changing. So if you've been in business for 10 years, the problems you solved for 10 years ago will either be experienced by different people, by different generations, or in different contexts. And so customer experience is a tool, I think, that is most valuable for sort of mid-size to large organizations because of that distance that our organizations had to necessarily create between what is happening in the real world and what we are designing for, making decisions for at executive level.
I think you're right. It's almost like that understanding of the customer is diluted the larger you get, because people bring different mental models. They quite often focus on their function, not on a holistic view. So they have KPIs for their function or for their part of the business. And I think it goes up to the executives when quite often in an executive team, you have disjointed conversations because everyone is pulling into their direction because, again, they want their function to be successful. They want their bonus to be paid. They want their KPIs to be achieved. So how exactly can customer experience and customer journey mapping and all of the tools and that you have in your pocket, how can they help?
I love that you're talking about KPIs in particular, right? Because KPIs is what we use to assess the health of our team, ultimately, and how we decide if our business is going in the right direction. When we grow a business, we think about KPIs or key performance indicators in technical or in expertise silos, if you will. Marketing will have their own sales, technology, engineering, customer service. And so no one is really able, either because there's too much going on or because of the views constrained, to see what a KPI across a journey would look like. So if we're trying to grow the business by X% or achieve a certain outcome, that outcome is the sum of multiple efforts of all the different teams. If I don't understand A, what the outcome needs to be, or B, how the different parts of the business together achieve that outcome, I'm going to scale individual capabilities, but I'm not going to scale the journey. And if I don't scale the journey, I don't scale towards the outcome. That's the mismatch. Customer experience ultimately has two functions: to create visibility and decision clarity. And the second piece is weaving together the different functions that all have got their own goals to work towards. It's a bit of an equalizer and it's a connector. That's what I see, where I see its real value.
It's fascinating because you said that it should help with clarity and decision making. And I'm now putting myself in shoes of one of the functional leaders, and they may not see it as making it easier for them because they still have the KPIs, and it can be so actually much harder to take a step back and see, oh, maybe for next few months, we need to make a decision that will in some way sacrifice my function, or my team needs to focus on something else, not the thing that I wanted to do because this is the shiny thing here, or because I think this is more important. Have you seen this sort of maybe breakthroughs or conversations happening in leadership teams when you were doing those activities?
So I think it's always important. There is an ideal state, and there's how life is actually happening.
Sure.
Right? Always.
Yeah.
And so the ideal state, of course, would be that we all work together towards that shared outcome. The reality is, and I think it's also valid, that we each have views on what the right next thing to do is and what the best thing is, both for our organization and for our own careers. At the end of the day, we are people with aspirations and goals inside organizations. The important thing, or the breakthrough, occurs when we start to create line of sight between multiple individual goals. So if you're the CTO and you're working with a team of engineers, and you have the CMO and a couple of other sort of senior leaders in the organization, and each of you go, what, in order to advance my career, I have to hit X. Let's say, so we've done a few sales journeys recently, and maybe I'll dive a bit into that. So the key thing that we're seeing is that most marketing teams are KPI'd on lead volume. They need to get as many leads into the pipeline as possible, fast, speed and volume. Then we go to sales, and sales is all about conversion. How many of those leads can I convert? In a B2B context, only about 2 to 5% of all leads convert into customers. It's hard work. Hey, that's pretty frustrating.
Of course.
And so then sales teams go, you got to get me more leads, because if I can only convert 2 to 5%, I got to keep grinding the machine. The thing is that what sales is looking for is sales readiness, which marketing is not assessing for. Marketing is assessing for segment fit and activity. Have they clicked, downloaded? Have they attended an event? And so that's where the first major breaker sits for most organizations. Sales and marketing don't understand that they're optimizing for different things. You then have a sales team that's converting. Great. So you got these people across the line, you're hitting your growth targets, you're getting your bonuses. And then the product team is like wondering why people are logging in, using it maybe for a week, and then utility drops off, right? Everything is going down. Meanwhile, customer services, we're getting all these phone calls, they're taking ages. They didn't realize they had signed up for a year, but they want to cancel today. Because sales needs to convert, sales is not interested in explaining all the ins and outs of it. It's not part of their function. Their job and their KPIs is to get people across. So then you're creating headaches for customer service, and product is adding this feature backlog that needs to be delivered because customers are asking for it, in air quotes. And so you're starting to see how we're mismanaging expectations across different parts of the journey. But it would be, if we all understood what we needed to deliver, we could start creating a line of sight and an agreement around how we're actually measuring what goes through the journey, and then what expectations are we setting? How do we drive the outcomes that we're seeking in a way that actually harnesses everybody's capability?
I wonder how, because when you said that in a product space, you have a user who logs in and maybe we sold them a license or 10 licenses or whatever it is. But I think also the world is changing from seed-based pricing to utility pricing. We see it in all the AI space when you pay for tokens and not so much for seeds. There might be maybe a basic seed price, but actually what you pay for is tokens. And I know that some organizations are looking into actually you pay for the action taken by an agent or the outcome you're achieving. So you actually need to really understand the customer problems you're trying to solve much more than just, I will promise you many things, and then hopefully you're going to pay me. And then maybe you're going to use it. Maybe you're going to get some value, hopefully. But maybe you may forget that you are paying. And then I'm just going to be happy and I'm going to hit my KPIs. And this leads me more to technology and how these techniques can help, let's say, technology-led, technology-heavy organizations, because you talk about scalability quite a lot, and technology is quite often brought into or is used as an example. Oh, if we have good technology or better technology, we could scale, we could go to different markets, we can serve more customers. The marginal cost of serving a customer is going to be lower because we're going to be in the cloud, all of the other things we've been hearing for years. So how is customer experience focus can help us there?
I think when it comes to scalability in the context of customer experience and sort of organizational growth, again, it's about removing what will break tomorrow or next week. And you can't see that if you don't understand the people that you are serving. So to give you an example, the pricing models come up really often for us. As organizations change or add more features, or as you say, maybe shift from a seat-based to a token-based and activity-based pricing model, their different pricing tiers change. If we don't understand what people are actually using and why, that becomes the first barrier. So it's great that you've created a scalable product that can do all of these things for all of these different people. The moment you don't get the pricing right, you've lost a third of your customers from the get-go. That's a challenge. The other thing is when we scale, it starts to become a bit of a rush sometimes. So I'm thinking about, we could add this feature, we could do this, we could change this. What if we just hack this code base and then this is going to happen? So the experiment, that's exciting, right? Especially if you're in the thick of it, because you go, oh, okay, I can see all these possibilities. And especially I think if you're a technologist, you can often see further into what will happen than many other parts of the business, because your job becomes to explore what's possible rather than to sustain what is. Yeah. And so your point of view is necessarily different. Your toolkit and your day-to-day work is fundamentally different from most other parts of the business. If you have no way to communicate what you do, and you have no way to inform your inquiry into what's possible, that you end up eating your own tail. Like you're consuming all your energy, you're consuming all your ideas. There's no feedback loop to help you understand where to go to next. So I think from a technology perspective, customer experience is it allows you to create constraints that are evidence-based around where you drive what's possible.
What sort of constraints? Do you have an example?
Yeah, so a constraint might be a particular user need. So I can give you an example. We were working with a global organization in the health and fitness space, and they're relying on external providers to fulfill their promise, right? And so those providers obviously reap the rewards of what they on sell, but they also have to pay a license, if you will, to be able, right, to promote that product in different markets. And so what was really interesting is that the product team was really driving towards diversity. They could have this product, and they pay out a license for each of these things. Makes sense. When we start talking to those providers, what we learn is what their value or that biggest ROI for them is delivering the same product multiple times rather than delivering multiple products once. So immediately you go, if I'm wanting to focus my engineering effort, it's depth over breadth. How can I make one product feature or one product segment more deeply functional as opposed to replicating functions across? So it becomes a design principle, becomes an engineering principle, depth over breadth, as an example. Yeah.
Okay. What about the other way around, or the constraint that technology has? We talk about technical debt, one of the favorite topics of engineers to talk about and complain about. And it quite often can constrain what we can build and the experience we can create. How does this fit into the conversation?
Yeah. I think technological debt needs translation often. Like it's not always clear to non-technologists
Yeah.
what it is or why that's a problem. So just do this. And it's like we're building on legacy systems from the 1980s, which is, especially in corporates, is not uncommon, much to my horror. But so how are we managing expectations? What is the language and the data we can use to manage expectations upstream into the journey and upstream into the organization? Because there will be either your marketing team going, we got to do all these things. Like we want to build out these amazing messages and campaigns and just tell people that this is what they want because we've seen based on the data, this is what they want. The CEO is going, but we got to add all these things because that means there's more revenue. And the technology team, based on what I'm seeing from the outside in, is often forced to serve two masters. Whoever's asking for, but you got to build the things that bring us the money. And then whoever is saying, oh, you got to do all these things, otherwise we can't bring in more people who will pay us the money. Their points of view are completely different, and their understanding of technology debt and I guess their ability to work with that is different. So part of this, in my view, is a storytelling element that I don't think we often invest in. How do we storytell technology debt in a way that non-technologists can understand? And how do we use those stories to create constraints for other parts of the business? Because we also got to think about, I can't just promise you the world if I'm in sales and marketing. I can only promise you in what's possible. And then how do I equip customer service to manage those expectations if they weren't clear? So we also have a responsibility moving out of tech to actually tell people what's possible because they don't know.
You just got me thinking about technology that's in a bit different way. I always try to work with teams and try to convince them to stop talking about technology debt, but move it to commercial debt and try to explain that actually this debt that we have in technology, it translates into commercial debt. But now maybe we can start using experience debt as well. How does this technology debt, what it means when it comes to experience, and actually customer journey mapping could help us with that. Because we can say now that we have this debt somewhere in a data center that's on the code that nobody has touched for 15 years, how it translates into the journey, and we can actually start showing on the journey map, like these are the points when it breaks. And these are the things we cannot do, all the experiences we could be delivering to address those pain points, but we can't. And our competition may be doing that already. I wonder if that could be something that the technology leader could bring to the conversation.
I think there'll be a phenomenal input.
Yeah.
And especially if you think about, so one of my favorite tools that we use to help organizations make decisions is prioritization. And it sounds really simple, but what are your prioritization frameworks that you use to decide what is important now and tomorrow? And importantly, what you decide not to do or never to do. Yeah. So de-scoping is like the most hairy exercise because no one wants to say, no, we're not going to do that. The moment we have a customer journey and the moment those journeys clearly pinpoint to the moments that matter, the conversation shifts. Right? So if I know that across a customer journey, there tend to be 3 to 5 moments that matter, these are the moments that make or break the experience. They often sit around buying decision, deciding to stay on, deciding to renew. If we know that there are particular pieces of experience, service, or product that enable yes again, or enable yes more, that's what's going to drive the bottom line requirements most of us have. And we can also clearly say, actually, maybe, okay, so the journey, if I think about a journey, what it needs to articulate to be useful is what the customer is experiencing. But importantly, it also has to showcase how we're enabling that experience. So we talk about that as above the line and below the line experiences. We have the customer view. We also must have the staff view. And then thirdly, we have the systems and processes that enable the staff to enable the customer. And of course, in technology-based organizations, is often a direct system to customer. right? As there's a direct line. And so the moment we can pinpoint where those two intersect, we also know what are the most important things to pull forward into our roadmap, to pull forward into our annual planning. So imagine a scenario where when you come together for annual or quarterly planning, you already know that there are two things you have to get right this year. And all you're deciding is the experiments that you'll run to get those right, rather than we have 16 different things we could be doing. And this is more important. This is more important. Let's start with a shared point of view.
Yeah. And then we start all of those 16 at the same time. And they are almost done at the end of the year, but not much value is delivered. And we don't really know which one worked, which didn't, and what has changed.
And to your point, what does done look like?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I think about technologies, we love talking about systems and inputs and outputs and how things connect and dependencies, because we know that this is what we deal with every day. And I had this realization just a minute ago that when you're talking about showing the clarity and showing maybe that's bringing the common language to that customer journey, for me, it's almost like customer journey can show the system of the business. And I think that's what could be really interesting for technologists, that having the chance to actually see that system and what's happening even before customer hits the part that we are building, and what happens maybe after as well. And I wonder if that's something that could inspire or convince technologists to actually look into customer mapping. And what do you think? Have you seen this sort of conversation that the technologists who was maybe not so much against the mapping, but they were skeptical, that they changed their mind? Do you have any stories to share?
One story that has always stuck with me was a really brilliant technology scale up we've been working with, and the focus necessarily was on growth, right? They had major VC funding. They had just shifted from founder led to CEO led, which is a major shift. And they brought us in for some customer mapping and customer journey mapping in particular. And the engineers as part of the team we're just here doing our thing, like whatever you want to do with customers, we're not too worried. And interestingly enough, during the conversation, we actually realized that the customer journey for this business was less important than the employee journey, because of the change in governance and ownership. There was a lot of internal shifting, which meant there was changes of leadership, changes of priorities, a lot of blind spots, and a lot of black boxes, which is a really uncomfortable environment for people to work in. And mapping the employee journey helped engineers understand how they could take back some control over their experience. They started to see how their pieces of work were fitting into the bigger picture. The customer journey was still there, but so they could see, oh yeah, this is how we're delivering to customers. And that can be really validating. Like in other scenarios, I've seen that when you go, oh, I've been working my butt off in this particular part of the product, and I can actually see that people really value and hear some real words from real people about how that's impacted their lives. But I also think, because engineers, in my experience, often are a receiving function, right? They get given a brief and they're there to execute. And it can feel like someone else is making all the decisions and you are just there to make it happen, which can be stressful and which can also be sometimes like disempowering, right? Because you know you're good at what you're doing. And it requires a really smart human to do good engineering work. But it's like you're just a machine with a heartbeat. And so by helping engineers connect what they are doing to either other team members and or the customer journey, we're starting to see resonance, and we're starting to see them having more agency because they can influence upstream. And the second piece I would say is, again, the storytelling piece. Like, we cannot underestimate the power of stories. And engineers speak their own language, as someone who is not prolific in any coding languages, I can tell you that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. What I do know is that there is a lot of depth and a lot of complexity and a lot of opportunity that sits in that way of thinking. If I don't speak the same language as you, I can't articulate what is important to me. If I can communicate what I believe to be true and important into a language you can understand, we are making decisions together and we are working on the same challenges together, aligned through shared language and shared vision and opportunity. And so I think journeys are a way to help translate different ways of seeing and being in the world into a single artifact we can all point to. And the moment that artifact becomes a shared source of truth, it becomes the most powerful alignment tool for teams. It's like it sits on the wall and you go, and I'm working on this, and this is how it relates to you, and I'm stuck here, and this is a problem because it starts affecting this piece. It's a way to create one team rather than individual functions who are just working towards their own KPIs.
And I guess it makes things less subjective because
So less
we
subjective.
we can take a step back now. Yeah, we bring the lens of a customer, so it's subjective for the customer,
Yeah.
but it's less subjective for us as people. And people may take it as less personal if I disagree with you. It's not that I disagree that your idea is bad. It's actually, I don't think it's going to help us achieve our goals or help our customers. That's what I disagree with. Your idea is brilliant. We should be doing it, sure, but it will not help us with the goals that we have, and they will not solve the biggest pain point.
Exactly.
Yeah. We cannot talk about AI, at least for a minute.
Yeah.
And I have two questions for you. With AI changing how we work and how people engage with technology and with products, maybe the first question is how the customer journey mapping and the customer experience overall, how is it going to change knowing that part of the journey will be taken over by agents, because people will just take an agent, do this thing for me, and an agent will take an action. Or we in companies, we will build agents to do part of the journey, and humans may not even know that they are talking to an agent. So how do you think this is changing with AI being so much more powerful and so much more looked into by organizations?
So the opportunity that I see that journey mapping can provide on an increasingly AI-enabled journey is that we actually know what good looks like. Right. So for a very long time, when we first started out with chatbots, which was this is very far from it, but they're the first thing we've been trying to agentify or augment through AI. And when we first started out with that, there was a script, right? And if the customer was putting in something the script couldn't figure out, then it's, sorry, I don't understand. And in the early waves of AI usage, we are seeing that we haven't really learned from that. Like, we are building an agent of some description and then throw it into the world without understanding what the constraints look like that would make this a good experience, which just offloads effort and resources into customer service. So we haven't really solved a business problem. We may have solved a technology problem, but not a business problem. The other piece that I think organizations should be aware of is that the moment we start delivering parts of the journey through AI agents, we're also giving up a lot more control. And that's okay. But last I checked, organizations really don't like not having control, and they really don't like the risks associated with that. So while the speed of technological evolution may require us to invest into AI faster and more extensively that we are comfortable with as people, journeys help us be aware of where we're making bets. And again, it comes back to those moments that matter. So if we know we're an organization that has limited resources and really wants to lean into the possibilities that AI creates, are we going to play with it during conversion? Is that a smart move? Or are we building capability elsewhere in the journey with AI first until we've figured out how this fits, learn from it, and then push into the moments that matter? So it becomes a risk mitigation tool and a risk management tool that we use to explore technology or new technology safely, from a sort of business performance perspective.
And how do you think that the work of experienced designers is going to change? Well, because in technology, we can see software engineering is certainly changing and all the other functions are changing as well. How is it going to influence how you work in your team,
Yeah.
how they work, in
Yeah.
how it's changing right now and how it may change soon?
So I think there are two parts to where AI could play a role in the way we design for experiences. At the moment, AI is still very much enabling humans in sense making. And based on what I've seen, the sense making that is required to turn abstract data into information and decisions is not yet where AI is at, but it can certainly help structure that process and make it a bit more effective and pointed. So that's where it is now. I think the major opportunity and where we need to work really closely with other parts of the business is data collection. So one big challenge that we are seeing when we come in is that organizations don't have a strategy when it comes to data collection. They're listening everywhere, are overwhelmed by data, and then don't know how to make decisions. Then we come in and we do data collection in a really strategic way during a point in time, right? So we might do surveys or we might do interviews, and they happen in February 2026. Is that data still reliable in November 2026? And so AI could be an amazing data collection tool going forward where we don't actually have to go through as much or any continuous extensive discovery processes because we have a baseline of data that is always available that we know is accurate and that speaks to the areas of the business that are most important to get right. So if I think about from an experience design perspective, what I would love to see is organizations considering how they can make their data collection more strategic. That also includes deciding what not to collect and when not to collect. Yeah. But around those moments that matter, I want to know how long it takes someone to say yes. I want to know how many stakeholders are involved. I want to know what the key things are that get them across the line. I want to know how that applies across different segments. I want to know which product features they are using. That is useful to me to design for the moment that matter, that is conversion, for example, rather than, would you buy with us? Would you buy from us again? Yes. Or on a scale from 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer us to a friend? Like decision-making ability from that's near zero. Other than, I think we're doing all right.
All right. So what I'm hearing is basically everyone who's listening to this podcast should try and see maybe first if maybe they already have customer journey map they just don't know about. So maybe they go and ask and then try and find it and maybe see what stage it's in. But if it's not there, maybe go and find a experienced designer and they can help you build a customer journey map and have this clarity of goals, priorities, and common language. And if someone would like to find you, Sarah, where they can find you and Reframer?
Yeah. So I'd love to connect with you if you're interested. Just have a chat on LinkedIn, Sarah Clearwater, and on reframer.co.nz. And if you are interested in playing with a map yourself and see how that would look for you, we've got a freebie that you can download at reframer.co.nz/90-minute map. And you can just download it and see what a map would look like, get a cross-functional team together and just jam for 2 hours and then see what that looks like. So I'm happy to throw that in the show notes as well, and then you can just download it and give it a try.
Cool. Yeah, we're going to have it in the show notes. And thank you, Sarah. That was really enlightening. Every time I talk to you, I end up being very inspired and energized. So thank you. I hope that's the same for the audience. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Jakob. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
That was Sarah Clearwater, founder of Reframer. A few things stuck with me from this conversation. First, that we're often scaling functions when we should be scaling the journey. Second, that engineers deserve to see how their work connects to what customers actually value. And third, this idea of experience debt. I think that's a concept every technology leader should bring to their next executive conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your fellow technology leader, and I'll see you in the next one.
A special thanks to our sponsor, Wires Uncrossed, helping teams across New Zealand, Australia and beyond untangle software delivery and build systems that truly perform. We're grateful for their support in making this conversation possible. Check them out at wiresuncrossed.co.nz.